So, how do you even begin to analyze a political performance? Well, sometimes you have to reach for a pretty unexpected tool. Today, we're diving into a fascinating analysis that uses a 19th century philosopher to decode 21st century politics. And believe it or not, it all kicks off with a story that just doesn't quite add up.
Okay, so right at the heart of this whole analysis, there's a puzzle. On one hand, you have this really dramatic story, a resignation confirmed at 10:30 in the morning, complete with that, very vivid detail about whiskey. But then, on the other hand, you have the official government record. The resignation was actually tendered at 2:21 in the afternoon. So, which one is true? What if the answer is kind of both?
So, how is that even possible? How can two completely different, conflicting realities exist at once? Well, the analysis we're digging into argues that this isn't some simple mistake. Oh no, it's a performance. And to really understand what's going on, you have to look at it through a very different kind of lens.
All right, so let's start right there with this whole tale of two timelines. Because that almost 4-hour gap, it's not just some minor detail. According to the source, it's the key that unlocks this entire political performance.
The analysis really boils it down to this super modern phrase: receipts beat vibes. The vibe is that emotional, dramatic morning story. The receipt? Well, that's the cold, hard, time-stamped official log. And in a functioning democracy, there's really no question which one is supposed to matter more, right?
So, if you stop looking at this discrepancy as an error and instead see it as a deliberate performance, the motive starts to become pretty clear. It's all about grabbing control of the story, making a public official act of government feel like some kind of private personal drama. But, if it is a performance, how do you even analyze it? The source we're exploring suggests we can't just use political science. Nope, we need a philosopher's toolkit. Specifically, we need to bring in an expert on power and on masks. And that expert is, wait for it, Friedrich Nietzsche. I know. Seems like a weird choice, right? A 19th century German philosopher? But his ideas about power, ego, and truth, they give us the perfect language to dissect exactly this kind of political theater.
First up from the toolkit is Nietzsche's most famous idea, the will to power. And you can think of it like a choice. Are you using your power to serve yourself, to expand your influence and control the story? Or are you using it for what this analysis calls a will to responsibility, to actually serve the public? That personal 10:30 a.m. story versus the official 2:21 p.m. record is a perfect example of that choice in action. The second tool is something called ressentiment, which is basically a politics driven entirely by grievance. It's a really powerful strategy because you don't actually have to build anything. As the source says, your whole political energy comes from just being against something, from attacking and negating. Okay, so we've got our tools, the choice between personal power and public duty, and the politics of just being against stuff. Now let's see how the analysis actually uses them to break down the performance, piece by piece. And this is where the analysis zooms in on something much more, well, visceral, the non-verbal cues. It makes this really provocative claim: the crazy eyes never lie. The whole point is that sometimes the body tells a much more honest story than the politician's carefully crafted script. So just watch what happens when the hard facts, like that government timestamp, start to corner the story someone wants to tell. The analysis says the physical performance gets tense. The script might be saying one thing, but a hardened smile or a tightly set jaw, they're telling a completely different story. You can actually see the mask start to crack. And you gotta remember, this whole performance wasn't happening in a vacuum. The analysis lays out the context, a full-blown political pressure cooker. You've got a massive scandal over confidential funds, then a public rebuke from the palace, and it's all leading to impeachment complaints and the very real threat of a vote. This isn't just politics as usual, it's a siege. So how does a performer react when they're under that much pressure? The analysis turns back to our buddy Nietzsche for the answer. Rage isn't a sign of strength, it's actually a confession of weakness. This idea is then tied directly to the political response, these furious counterattacks and public threats. According to this analysis, we shouldn't see these moments as signs of strength. We should see them for what they really are, signals of panic, the sound of someone completely losing control of their story. And all of this, the cracking performance, the angry lashing out, It all builds to the analysis's central and honestly most powerful metaphor: the moment a politician moves from wearing a mask to wielding a knife.
So first, let's talk about the mask. These are the political costumes, right? The silent worker, the strong mother, the unyielding reformer. They're the roles being played for the public. But as the analysis points out, a costume is only convincing until the real-world results start to completely contradict the slogan.
And when that mask fails, what's left underneath? Well, the analysis gives us this incredibly powerful distinction. A real leader wields a sword. It's a symbol of honor, of legitimate authority. But when that legitimacy is gone, all that's left is the knife, a tool of pure aggression and intimidation. One leads, the other just lacerates. And here's the devastating conclusion of this analysis. The knife stopped being just a tool and has become the entire brand. The primary political currency is no longer leadership, it's just raw intimidation. So after all this deep dive philosophical analysis of masks and knives, you might be asking, so what? Why does any of this actually matter? And that brings us to the final and maybe most important point: why the receipts, the facts, are all that really count. It matters because of numbers just like this one. This isn't some abstract theory. The source points directly to the 125 million pesos in confidential funds that blew up into a national scandal, noting the claim they were spent in just 11 days. This is a receipt, a hard, verifiable fact that demands accountability, way beyond any performance. And this is where the analysis turns the spotlight right back on all of us. It says the solution isn't just to be a better critic of the performance. It's to change the rules of the entire theater. It's a call to action, to build a political culture where we value the institutions that give us the receipts, and where we have the literacy to demand that those receipts matter more than any rhetoric. Because when you strip everything else away, what this all comes down to is this one fundamental distinction. Force of personality is not the same thing as force of argument. And according to this analysis, a healthy democracy absolutely depends on every single one of us knowing the difference. And so the whole analysis leaves us with one final, really provocative question. It turns the camera back on us, the audience. Are we content to just sit back and applaud a convincing performance? Or are we going to be the ones who look past the mask and demand to see the receipts for the actual work? The choice, it suggests, is ours.